Hello, Kavan from the akhi&saltfish digital network here, and I just wanted to check in with you before you start this episode. So, a great episode. Dr Marcella Daye called me not too long ago and said she wanted me to capture her event taking place at Delapré Abbey in Northampton. It was all about women walking and their well-being, and it was called Step Together. So for me, that's the exact type of topics that I love to cover on the network. And I learned a lot on the day. I spoke to those who had taken part in the research over the last year. I'd spoken to those who were just in the audience on the day, and I'd spoken to those with an academic interest in the field. You're going to really enjoy it because I think there's something in there for everyone. And I think as well that if you've been questioning, putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation in order to grow and develop, this is going to be the catalyst you need to get that done and to keep moving ahead. A quote from the show is, do as much as you can for as long as you can. And for me, that really has stuck with me over the last few weeks as I've been sitting on this edit. Do as much as you can for as long as you can has been cycling through my mind, as well as actually smiling when you see strangers in the street. I know it sounds weird, but watch the episode, it will all make sense. So I just wanted to check in with you, give you that introduction, and encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode because it will really help us grow. But more importantly, let me know in the comments what you learned from this episode. I'd really love to hear from you. As always, there's a little note there as well behind on the wall that says don't quit. If you're thinking about quitting, don't. Step together with your peers, with the community, whatever the weather, and get stuck in. Cheers, take care, see you at the next one. Kavan. But I was just saying to your sister, the healing of walking and some of the conversations, we were hearing here and there, incredible.
It's unbelievable. And I was even thinking about like the comparison of it with the swimming thing as well. It's just like, there's something about nature and getting out.
And I tell you what, actually, I'm very glad we're having this conversation. This is very serendipitous because when we spoke, you talked about being a runner. Yeah. And I said I'm not a runner. I'm more of a cycler, cyclist. Since then, bagged the 5K. Bagged the 5K. Honestly, those conversations that I tell myself around not being a runner, I think we're running, right? Yeah. Let's just keep it running.
Yeah, so, it's hard.
Hello and welcome to the Step Together podcast. You're joined by me, Kavan, and now you see a few special guests right next to me. We're joined by Catherine Joy White, author of This Thread of Gold. Yep. And your sister.
Yeah, my sister. Hi, I'm Laura White.
Laura White, thanks for joining me.
Honestly, actress extraordinaire.
Yes, come on.
Star of Doctor.
Tell the people.
Star of Doctor. So I am Laura. I'm an actress, and I also work in mental health and wellbeing in the creative arts. So I sort of support different shows doing mental health, wellbeing, and equality and diversity work.
I love that. And welcome, by the way, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. I was just saying, I don't know if we caught the start of that one there, but I was saying to Catherine, you and I had a conversation way back in October 23, and one of the passions you spoke about is your running, alongside swimming, and how it sort of gets you out the moment and just in your own mind and clearing that mind. It's a real sort of restorative process. Now, I said at the time, I'm not a runner. And am I right? You get new running shoes for every occasion. Every Christmas you get new running shoes, right?
From my mum, who's with me here today as well, by the way.
What are you on? Are you on clouds?
I'm not on clouds yet.
What are you?
I've just got some Asics, but they're the ones I always get and I love them.
Fire. Love that. Are they gel
Yeah, exactly.
I'm talking this language now!
I'm thinking about clouds, but I think I have to go with my dad. I think my mum would. I don't know. She might know about clouds. She might. You never know. Yeah.
Did you see Sarah's? Sarah had some on cloud. Fire. They were fire.
Wait, was Sarah the one who that guy's right? Oh no, I didn't actually see her. Someone else had some really nice trainers. The woman who did the athletics.
Yeah. With the blue bottom.
Yeah, they were really nice.
Yeah, they were good. Sorry guys, we're getting distracted on shoes. But the point I was trying to make is conversations like this really inspire the audience. Like, I'm not a walker. Famous last words.
Yeah.
I'm not a walker. But I've been inspired today, and I wasn't a runner when I first met Catherine. But since then, I've bagged a few 5Ks, got a few miles in, and it's genuinely incredible. Now, it's not my identity yet, but I know I've got it in the tank, and that feels good. When the weather's nice, I'm a bit of a fair weather runner. It feels really good. Yeah. Today, I want to hear more about your reflections of some of the things we heard. We heard from some incredible academics, but community members as well, about getting stuck into this research being led by Dr Marcella Daye. What are your reflections, Catherine?
Well, I think it's exactly what you just said. So a lot of the women we heard from today were probably over the age of 40 or 50, I would say, the majority of them. And I think the common thread that all of them spoke about was, I never thought I could be this person that would be out there exercising. Even though a lot of them said, I've always loved the great outdoors, I've loved nature,
but it didn't feel like a space that was accessible. And it's something about, and it's exactly what you just said about running, you know, we talk ourselves out of things, but it's so amazing to see the power of community. And I think seeing how all it takes is like, so Sarah from Black Girls Hike has now begun like leading these hikes, and she's bringing in these people who always said they wouldn't do it. It's somehow seeing people and knowing that there's someone who can kind of guide you through it, make you feel safe, and then you find yourself going it alone. I just found it so moving. I was crying. I just sat listening and crying. We all were.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned your work in the mental health space. You know, what are some of the connections that you were making there? I'm sure a lot of the stuff you were hearing was resonating with you.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I'm a big advocate. I'm actually doing a Black Girls Hike in August, which I'm so excited for. I'm going to Norway, which I'm kind of terrified about. I think it's actually going to be really hard. But I'm a huge advocate for just like getting yourself up and outside, and how that can be so transformative for your mental health, no matter what you're kind of dealing with. But just for daily, like keeping on top of your well-being, to just get yourself up, get yourself out, be in nature, how grounding it can be. Lots of people were speaking about that, like how they were noticing things for the first time, like the different shades of the sky. Like that's something that you don't, when you're kind of in this world where we're so digitalized and we're so like inside all the time, we don't pay attention to like nature and how it's healing powers, but also just how powerful mindfulness can be, just being present in the moment and noticing what's around you.
I couldn't agree more. And I had a conversation once with an academic called Jane Pilcher. She specialises in the sociology of names. Fascinating conversation. But one of the things she spoke about, she's at her best when she's outdoors walking actually. And she said, I don't know why it's called mindfulness, because in an ideal world, I think about nothing. So I like to call it mindlessness.
Love that.
And she said that, and I thought, wow, it's very true. When we talk about being mindful, really, it's the emptiness, it's the clarity. And that's mindlessness. So take that away with you if you can. And one of the things you mentioned there, one of the ladies, Dorcas, I think her name was, she says, I walk while I still can.
Oh, I love that.
You know, if you don't use it, you lose it, another lady said. And those are some of the testimonials we were getting, and it made me realise, do you know what, I get a few aches and pains here and there, and sometimes you've got to walk them away, and just using your body to be a healer. As much as we lean on medicine, we lean on all these things, let's lean on our bodies and the great outdoors. And a fascinating phrase was, what was it, the Natural Health Service.
I love that.
That was a line.
It was so interesting. What did he say? I wrote it down about illness. He said something about it's become about illness and not about. We have to actually have that quote.
It's true.
The National Health Service become less of a health service and more of an illness service. And so he said we need to go to the Natural Health Service, which I love, because it's about preventative rather than going when we're already falling apart mentally, physically, whatever it is. Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. Our granddad actually always used to say, as much as I can for as long as I can. That was his catchphrase, and I love that. It's the same thing as what Dorcas said.
And that's what I'm going to... So Brittany, my girlfriend, she's behind the camera, and I always wake her up around 5:30, 6 a.m. During the weekdays to go to the gym. And I'm going to use that phrase. We've got to do as much as we can, as long as we can.
Sorry, Brittany.
We'll see about that.
Well, listen, Catherine, Laura, it's been fantastic catching up with you. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Step Together podcast. Stay tuned for more guests and more conversations about what we learned today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Hello and welcome back to the Step Together podcast. You're joined by me, Kavan, of course. And I want to introduce two people today. I've got Dorcas Francis, who provided a testimonial earlier on what it means to be out and about and involved with Step Together. And I've got Christine Phillip, who I bumped into in the atrium over there. So we said, come on, let's do it. You was in the audience. You heard the testimonials as well as I did. So let's get stuck in. Dorcas.
Yes.
The viewers here may or may not have heard your testimonial. Okay. So I just wanted to give us a little bite-sized piece of it, really. I don't know if you've got a poem on you. It's fine if you haven't.
Oh, could have gone and got it.
That's all right. I'll tell you what. While I speak to Christine, do you want to go get it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Let's do that. Christine, you was in the audience. What did you reflect on as you was in the audience there, hearing all those testimonials and hearing from those great organisations?
I just think that there's so much out there for ladies of colour and the beautiful nature that is just on our doorsteps, and it's just making the most of it and actually just taking that confident step and meeting new people and just exploring and getting to know your community. And it's just so inspiring. It just inspires me and makes me smile to see how much work is actually going on behind the scenes that I learnt about today, really. So it's a beautiful thing, really beautiful thing. So I'll definitely get involved in a lot more things around the local area. Yeah.
Now, I've got to ask you a big question.
Okay.
This is all about stepping together, whatever the weather. It's a lovely day today.
It's a lovely day today.
You're feeling inspired today. You know, are you going to be there, whatever the weather?
I'm going to try my best.
Love
I
that.
definitely have. I love to cycle, so I cycle all around. But I'm less likely to do it when it's raining. Though I do it when it's raining. But yeah, as long as it's not torrential, I'll try my best. But I was just speaking to a lady out there, and she said she started doing it in the frosty mornings where there's
Wow.
like ice and the cobwebs, and she says it's absolutely stunning. So definitely something to experience.
Well, you know, talking about the weather, welcome back, Dorcas, as well. Talking about the weather, one of the things I was reflecting on is time at primary school, and school in general. When it rained, we didn't go out for playtime. They kept us in. They said, you know, we'll call it golden time. So actually, some of those barriers that you build in around the weather and the weather being something that we should avoid were built in from early. So undoing that, I always tell my family and friends, you know, when it rains, good. I have to reinforce, good, no problem. Because as a child, I was told, whoa, it's raining, don't go outside. So unpicking some of those is a really great thing. And Christine, just a final one with you. You were talking about, you know, it's great to see so much happening around women of colour and getting active. But is that something, or are those activities you were aware of before today's event?
Actually, Black Girls That Hike, I'm not familiar with that until today, actually. So I'm definitely going to be exploring that. But no, I honestly don't know much about what goes on in Northamptonshire for women of colour and diverse backgrounds. So I definitely will be doing more research into that. But the Black Girls Who Hike, that's a fantastic opportunity, and they go all over. And the pictures that she was showing us today, I'm just blown away at some of the places they've been to. So yeah, I'm excited.
So Dorcas, I don't know about you, but I think we've found the Northamptonshire Black Girls Hike leader. So, on that note, I want to talk about Coventry. Yes. So, Dorcas, you're from Coventry.
I am, yes.
My grandparents, when they first arrived in the UK in the late 50s, early 60s, the first place they landed before they got to Northampton was Coventry. So it's got a very, very big Caribbean background, but also diversity generally.
It's a very diverse city.
Yeah.
Yes.
So welcome, first of all, to the Step Together podcast.
Thank you.
And first of all, I just want to thank you as well for your testimonial. Really inspiring, making the journey up here to Northamptonshire, to the beautiful Delapré Abbey that we're in today.
Yes, it's wonderful.
It's honestly beautiful. And one of the things you mentioned was, I walk while I still can.
Yes.
And, you know, you were quite different to the other people who were delivering testimonials in that you weren't anti-outdoors. You got an allotment, you love getting stuck in, but you were still able to surpass thresholds that you didn't see yourself doing. You know, Snowdon.
Yes.
Wow. Snowdon, listen, this is a genuinely true story. My little brother, he's 22, 21. He messaged me today saying he's got Snowdon planned for his 6 weeks holiday. I looked at that and my face was like, seriously, my face was screw up because I thought, I don't even know if I got that in the tank. So good on him and good on you. How was Snowdon? Give us some reflections of that.
Snowdon was absolutely a wonderful experience. There's a walking group from Coventry called Steppers. And that's Asians and Black walking together. And Cheryl is the founder of that, actually. And what she did last year was called Repping in Snowdonia. And so she encouraged people to come with their flags from your country of origin or your T-shirts and stuff. She'd hired mountain guides, so it was a safe event. And we were well prepared for that. And it was a wonderful day out. And also getting to the top as well was quite a challenge. There's places where you have to scramble up, you know, on your hands and knees and stuff.
Whoa.
But once you got up there, you think, yes, I've done it. And we're at the top. There's got pictures on Facebook where we're there flying the flags, you know. Asians, Black, representing. And I really enjoyed it.
That sounds incredible. And I have to ask, what was the weather like?
The weather, it was a little bit overcast, but it was dry. Yes.
And so you know, someone was watching over you, making sure it was a good time.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And we appreciated that.
So Dorcas, one of the things you mentioned during your testimonial was a fantastic poem you read out. And someone shared that with you because basically it reminded them of you. You have an ethos when you walk out and when you get out and amongst the community to smile and say good morning or good afternoon to everybody.
Yes.
What I want to ask you is, Did that at any point, particularly towards the start, did that feel difficult? Did that feel alien? Did that feel odd to say hello and good morning?
No, not at all, because I'm a child of the Caribbean. I was born in Jamaica, and from Caribbean countries, that is the norm. And also within our community is a norm. You don't walk past a black person without saying hello, you know. And so it was actually nice to get back to that. And also I worked abroad as well in Bermuda, which is a beautiful island, and that is their norm as well. So it's nice to actually get back into that, just to greet people, you know, walking with a smile as well.
So in essence, saying hello brought you home?
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, that's never thought about it that way.
There you go. Tell us more about that poem and how it came to land in your hands.
Right, the poem is called Smiling is Infectious. I was down at my allotment. I was speaking to the daughter of one of the guys down there, and we were just talking. My friend and I at the time, we were doing like a lot of the walks along the canal in Coventry and surrounding areas, and we said what we do is we smile and say good morning to people. If they don't respond, that's their choice. We're not going to have an attitude or stuff. But I must say most people responded. And so from that conversation, she actually texted me and said she was really quite inspired by that. And so a couple of weeks later, as I was at the allotment, and her father came and said, "Oh, Karen had sent something for you." And I said, "Oh, what is it?" And so she'd gone out and she'd found this poem, and she'd written it out in lovely cards with little blingy bits on it. And it said, "To Dorcas, I thought of this poem by Spike Milligan when you told me about you and your friend smiling at everyone on your canal walks, which I think is wonderful. Hope you like it. Love, Karen." And the poem reads, "Smiling is infectious. You catch it like the flu. When someone smiled at me today, I started smiling too. I walked around the corner and someone saw me grin. When he smiled, I realised I'd passed it on to him. I thought about the smile and then realised its worth. A single smile like mine could travel around the earth. So, if you feel a smile begin, don't leave it undetected. Start an epidemic and get the world infected." Which I just thought was lovely. And I keep this on my free time.
So what you can't hear, but I can, is some applause right there coming through.
Oh.
So on the final episode, you will hear some applause. Often, let's give a round of applause in real life, actually.
Lovely, love that.
Often, I get reminders from behind the camera to smile, right? I can be a bit miserable. But that has brought a smile to my face. That is incredible. And I'm so glad that I was able to witness that today, both in the room there and also capture it on the Step Together podcast. Dorcas, thank you so much for joining me. And Christine, thank you so much. I think you're a testament to the networking you said you wanted to achieve. Look at that. We're all strangers, but we're getting along, we're getting connected. So thank you. And make sure you keep stepping in Coventry with your people. Thank you, Dorcas. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome back. And I am joined by Professor Corinne Fowler. Have I said that right?
You said it perfectly.
So thank you for joining me. My name's Kavan. And the Step Together event today has been a real moment for me. Hearing about, women walking and their well-being and some of the real sort of transformational experiences that have happened in our community, on our doorsteps. In my mind, they feel quite new, right? This feels like a new moment. But you've written a book, haven't you, around, is it Our Island's History?
It's called Our Island Stories.
Our Island Stories.
Yeah, and it's a book of country walks through colonial Britain.
Talk to me about that, because we're in the perfect space to have this conversation. We're in the library of Delapré Abbey. So this is all about history. Delapré Abbey's been here for hundreds of years. So much colonial history here as well. So what did you learn writing that book? And first of all, why are you writing a book like that?
I wanted to write a book which went deep into the countryside to explore what kind of colonial stories would come out of different places, different localities. So I did 10 walks through England, Wales and Scotland.
Wow.
And I explored the colonial histories of things like wool, copper, sugar, opium. And it just kind of, instead of these places having just a local domestic history, you realise pretty quickly that pretty much everywhere you walk is connected to the history of the British Empire in one way or another. And another thing that you realise, the more you look into this, is that how varied that history is. So I've got a tobacco walk in Cumbria,
Wow.
I've got a copper walk in Cornwall, I've got a wool walk in Wales, a sugar walk on the island of Jura. And it just goes on and on. It's just a revelation, really. And I think it's also fascinating how many of these villages and hamlets deep in the countryside were more multicultural in the 18th and 19th centuries than they are today. So it really challenges the way we think about countryside and who used to live there and who changed those places in the past.
I think that's fascinating because I always love ideas that challenge what we think we know. But I have to ask you, like, why is it that these things they needed to be realised, they needed to be revelations? Why aren't they things that we accept and we know? What is it, do you think, that is hiding these histories from being forefront?
I think there are lots of things. First of all, I think that we as a modern generation have forgotten what our predecessors might have known and what would have been obvious to them. So I think it's important to remember that many people tried to make money through the British Empire, and they could be just agricultural labourers, going to be overseers on plantations, really horrible jobs like that, or going to fight for the East India Company, or just going to become sailors or working for the Navy, fighting colonial wars. So at the time, it would have been obvious. It would have been your cousin, your uncle, your brother, or whatever. But I think that not only have we forgotten that, but it's also very sensitive history, because there is a lot of violence involved. There's a lot of pain and suffering involved on the part of formerly colonised people, formerly enslaved people. And because of that, it's something we don't really want to look at very much. And so it's been avoided. So where we could have remembered and explored the very, very local rural histories of empire, we've turned away and not looked at them. So I think now is a great moment for opening up the colonial histories of the British countryside again, and making them known, talking about them, and making it clear to both locals and to visitors to those areas, walkers, in fact.
Yeah. I found something really fascinating. I went on a walk around Northampton with Marcella, and it was focusing particularly on sort of the Windrush Black history. But one of the cues Marcella gave all the walkers was look up. Because actually, a lot of the cues, the nods, the signals for a colonial history, and particularly a black history, they are present. They're visible if you just look up. But I found a lot of my visual trajectory, my gaze was just straight ahead, or even at the floor, or often at my phone, So looking up and seeing some of the timestamps, some of the sort of, nods to who made it, when they made it, and how they made it were really obvious when I looked up. What are some of the signals that you noticed on your walks that actually would help you realise?
Well, one of the things I'd recommend is go to a village church. I have yet to go to a village church that doesn't have some reference to empire. It might be in a graveyard where maybe somebody of African heritage is buried. That's pretty common in village churches. But it might also be inside the church. If you look up at the memorials, you often see that somebody died in the Anglo-Afghan War, or that they had died in India fighting in the so-called Indian Mutiny, or that they had died in the Boer War in South Africa. And this immediately gives you clues about how locals were previously involved in empire. Or, more commonly, you'll find memorials to the wealthy families who had the money to pay for the memorials, and they've got a nice section of the church cordoned off for themselves, so they could sit separately from everybody else. And that family, look at their history, go to the Legacies of British Slave Ownership database, look and see if their names come up there, or look in the East India Company at Home project, see if their names maybe crop up there. And there's lots of ways of finding out.
That reminds me, we had a tour of Leicester. We just moved there maybe a month before, and it was October where we had the tour, and we went to a place called Wanlip. And Wanlip was owned by the Palmer family, still to this day actually. And we went to the local church in Wanlip and the cemetery. On some of the tombstones was like a dollar stamp, and we thought, and literally it signals that they're rich. and one of their workers and pretty much their slaves who lived in the house with them had a really monumentous tombstone, and it was described to us in two parts. One, they made such a big celebration for their worker, but two, they didn't make it necessarily because they were kind. They made it because that was a status symbol. And that was really interesting to see that, the Palmer family are more associated now with being socialites in present day London.
Philanthropists as well. Yeah.
That rebranding of the wealth. Any other examples of how people have rebranded their wealth?
Yes. So if you look around the countryside, pretty much anywhere in Britain, you're going to see hedges. And those hedges are part of the long kind of running history of the enclosure, which is when common land that people used to have access to was closed off by landowners and claimed for pasture land or so-called improvements. But actually, if you look at the source of the wealth that paid for that enclosure, that actually made people have less access to land, and there was a mass privatisation of land. A lot of that wealth is colonial wealth, whether it's an East India Company fortune or whether it's slavery wealth. And so I think it's just looking differently at the things which have become so familiar that we almost don't notice them. And a lot of these people who had a name for philanthropy, who built the local village school, the local village hospital, what they were doing was they were trying to establish themselves as somehow long-running family with a legacy of giving, and that's a form of self-fashioning which is a deliberate attempt to distract people from the source of their wealth. It's not everywhere with every propertied family, but it is very common, and you will find it all over the place.
And I guess what you see and what that serves to do is you get people with legitimate causes to say, but wait, this is a great thing, this is a great school. And they will reject any notion of negativity attached to that name. But of course, the great work you're doing and other historians are doing is actually unearthing the truth that is hidden by that philanthropy. So thank you so much for joining me. Just finally, before you go, Our Island Stories has been sort of accredited and really praised by fantastic figures in the field, such as David Olusoga. But I read that name and I read, your book, and I recognise that there's no way this would have passed certain circles without some criticism. So I'd like you to sort of talk a little bit more about that if you can, and some of the pushback you may have received, because I'm sure if you're watching this with a bingo card, you can predict some of the pushback that you would have received. So yeah, let's see.
Well, as I say, it is very sensitive, and people get quite triggered by you even opening up this subject, because they perceive it as an attack on the countryside, on our way of life, etc., etc. And it can be quite disruptive doing this work, because it means that you have new ways of seeing the things that we thought we knew, like you said. And so when I worked with the National Trust to talk about National Trust houses, connections to empire, and we produced a report about that, there was a massive pushback, and I did get a lot of hate mail and angry letters and things like that, and even threats. But I think that where it was sensible, I did reply to some of that hate mail. And it was absolutely fascinating. I managed to engage initially very hostile, angry people in a conversation. And I realised that culture wars are divisive and unnecessary, and that we can connect with people who don't initially agree with us by just being gentle and respectful, even when they're not respectful towards ourselves. It's a form of strength, and it's a form of making sure you don't become a victim in that situation. But I learned a lot from reaching out to people and finding out why they were upset, and therefore how to communicate in a way that reached more people and not just people who agree with me. So that's also important if you want to change stuff.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think what that does is it resonates with the conversation we were having earlier with a lady called Dorcas, who provided a testimonial earlier. And she said one of her sort of rules of engagement when walking out in Coventry, where she was, is always smiling and saying good morning or good afternoon. And that peaceful interaction, even for those who don't smile back and don't say good morning back, is a form of her, maintaining her own standard, and often it's contagious and brings people back around. Yeah. So thank you, and thanks for doing your great work.
Thank you.
Our Island Stories out right now in all good bookstores. Make sure you check it out. Professor Fowler, thank you very much.
Thanks
and take
so
care.
much. It's lovely to talk to you.
You too. Hello and welcome back to the Step Together podcast. You're of course joined still by me, Kavan, and the catchphrase is whatever the weather, and it's a beautiful day today here at Delapré Abbey. I'm joined by Rachel McGrath from Northamptonshire Community Foundation. Northamptonshire Community Foundation, apologies. It's county-wide. And I'm joined by Natasha. So, Step Together is a phrase I've been saying throughout this episode, right? And Natasha, I need to come to you first. Where did the name come from? Because this is your baby, right? The name is your baby.
I guess so. Yeah. It was a collective group, we were together when we created the name. But Step Together just represents belonging, empowerment, community, and we emphasize well-being as well. And that's what the name just embodies and creates that.
I think that's really powerful, and I just want to give a little nod to Dr Marcella Daye as well. Right at the beginning, I spoke about Dr Marcella Daye not being an authority that is just leading the charge and has followers, right? This is a real embedded effort from the whole community, and the name alone, really represents that. So thank you, Natasha, and great branding as well. If you're not in marketing, you should be. Rachel.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going very well. I've been having a really, really, really great morning. Just to say to Natasha, I'm so inspired by your creativity, but also your authentic story about your own journey into well-being, walking, and I can just see the next Nina Simone sitting by the river, penning out her songs.
I love that. And look at this. This is what it's about, right? This is about community getting together, networking, and really building those bonds. So thank you for being a major part of that. You mentioned belonging earlier, and Rachel, I want to throw that word back at you, because right at the start of your conversation, you mentioned equality, diversity, and inclusion, and you had a sort of challenge to that. And you said, actually, for you, it means dignity, a sense of belonging, and justice. And I thought, that is a moment that I want to capture live on this podcast. So can you unpack that a little bit for us, please?
Yes, certainly. And just to give a bit of background, I'm here today representing Northamptonshire Community Foundation, but we're actually a global movement of 2,000 community foundations. I'm on a WhatsApp group with 33 Ukrainian community foundations. Wow. Who at this moment are on the front line providing emergency response through grants and supporting local civilians during a conflict. But community foundations are all about place. We follow the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the strapline for that is to think global but act local. And I'm coming back to your point, so I'm just meandering a little bit like a river. But I think that's so incredibly important. I think we are part of a global community, but you prove a sense of belonging by the place that you're in. And as grant makers, what we do is we are the front line for supporting and funding community groups, organisations, charities like Delapré, who are providing projects and activities for local residents to get involved in. It's at that practical, keep it real level. And part of our commitment to that is making sure that we're here for all four corners of the county and for all communities, that we leave no one behind. So in order to do that, you have to have a real testament to community engagement. And I welcome the journey of equity, diversity, inclusion, but I think that's quite academic, quite corporate. For me, from a community foundation, a community level perspective, I like to humanise words. Because everybody can write an EDI policy, make an equality statement. It's how you act on it that matters, and how you make that important as a golden thread throughout your work. So I think that dignity is something that everybody wants. They want dignity. And so I feel that in our communities, in our groups, the work that we should be doing should be dignity proofing services, whether that be somebody who is currently going through a financial crisis and needs to access a food bank or a community food larder. I think dignity matters so that you can tell your story in a safe space and not be judged and be welcomed. It also means recognising and valuing everybody from all walks of life. Now, that's really important. I think a sense of belonging, because I think if you feel a sense of belonging, you can then feel pride in a place. You can then feel that you have something to contribute. You can then feel empowered to make friends, to feel connected to a wider mission or purpose, whether that be through your work, whether that be through the local community, whether that be through your local school or local university. And that's just a sense of belonging, I think, is what makes everybody feel that they're not alone, that they can build networks and friends, future dreams and aspirations. I deliberately don't talk in academic terms because that doesn't relate to the lion's share of communities that we're working alongside, and I believe in accessibility in that sense. And then for me, the other point is around social justice, and that's around recognising that there is discrimination, racism, barriers for members of our community, members of our society, where that needs to be addressed. And obviously, I'm not speaking in the historical context, I'm speaking in the here and now. We make sure that our giving is inclusive to all communities, whether people are on a low income, whether people are on the ability spectrum, whether they're younger or older. Discrimination happens to younger people, it happens to older people. Whether people feel that they're experiencing some form of racism, whether they feel that they're being excluded. I think community foundations are here to fund community groups that empower the diverse brilliance of our communities in order to make sure that they belong, that they have a sense of dignity, but they can also make a difference. And this is where, on top of that, the importance of partnership and collaboration. And this is where I come back today. I think there's nothing more powerful when communities across all walks of life come together to step together, your beautiful
there you
words.
Go.
And that's how you break down barriers. That's how you understand people's stories. That's how you get a sense of somebody's passions and dreams. That's how you build a better society, one step at a time, at a place-based level.
Thank you. That was incredible to listen to, by the way, and it really, your passion shines through, and the clear sense of direction shines through as well. And I think, no pun intended, but we need direction in communities to say, okay, as a community, where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? And that's what really helps communities have vitality rather than just existing. That vitality to keep moving, keep growing is really, really critical in my view. Natasha, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about intergenerational well-being, intergenerational walking, because you really gave me some inspiration when you was talking about your experiences. First of all, I want to give you your props, your flowers, for being a leader in your own right, a coordinator in your own right, and talk to me about your experiences in the outdoors. You mentioned meandering earlier, Rachel, and you walk quite often by the rivers in Northamptonshire. What have you learned, and what have they taught you about yourself?
I've learned that it's important to just get lost. I feel like sometimes we can be so caught up with everything that we're thinking about or doing and our responsibilities, but sometimes we just need to put it to a side and just be who we are in nature. I've been all around Northampton in terms of lakes and stuff, but when I was younger I did used to go by myself quite a lot, because personally for me, I don't like waiting for people. I like to do things. I'm just like that. But I enjoy doing that. And I've wrote many songs by lakes. I've also performed for the community as well, in a few charities. And it's been such a pleasure because it's what I love to do. Yeah.
So when we talk about sort of intergenerational walking, your mum was also a lady who provided a testimonial earlier. I could be wrong here, but I feel like you sort of inspired her to get walking. Is that accurate?
Well, she inspired me. She's always inspired me. My mother's an amazing woman, like everything about her. And even from the time she was younger, like she used to go to the market. She used to cook for like loads of people, so I would say she was always someone that's inspired me, but she always tells me as well, like, oh, you inspire me to be active, go gym, go walking. So there's a bit of both as well, definitely.
And your son, the next gen.
Yes.
You know, you're not walking alone anymore by the canals.
No. My son and my partner, like, we go everywhere. We've been to Butterfly Farms, we've been up Yorkshire Hills.
Ooh.
For a wedding. It was so beautiful.
For a wedding?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, even though he was getting pushed in the buggy, so he had the easy life.
Yeah.
But it's such a joy. It's such a joy being in nature, being with my family, being around loved ones, and especially like bringing everything coming together and, yeah, stepping together.
Whatever the weather?
Wherever the weather.
And one thing as well, I note that, you know, with your little boy, I've got a few young nephews myself. I know they're not always the quickest to get their shoes on, to get ready. So now you might have to wait for a few people to get ready. Is that a patience that you've been taught?
I'm learning. I'm learning.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me. And Rachel, just a quick note with you, if possible, because I loved your presentation because it was so authentic. And I mean that from a language sense, but visually as well. I can see you put the work in to get to where you are today, to have the validation, the experience, to be able to say what it is you say about your experiences. Two things I want to pick up. One, your inspiration, 1967 Boston Marathon, that. But also, the importance of a selfie. Because I feel like selfies have got a bad rap in the last 15, 20 years, or maybe 10, 15 years, right? Selfies have got a bad rap. But you had a really great angle on the importance of a selfie that myself and Brittany, we really relate to as new runners. I'm not saying runners, new one foot in front of the others.
I'm very average. So don't worry.
So, first of all, 1967.
Yes, so Catherine Switzer, she illegally entered what was then a men-only marathon race. All marathons at that time in 1967 and prior had been only exclusive to men. But with the approval of a very supportive ally boyfriend, she entered the race, and it was only realised halfway through the Boston Marathon by some of the race organisers that a woman was racing in it, and they tried to stop her, but then a number of men came forward, including her partner, and stopped those men from blocking her. She became the first woman to complete the Boston Marathon, and then since then set a precedent for there being mixed race races in terms of marathons, half marathons, and now it's the norm. But sometimes you need that pioneer. You need that a person to make that first step and challenge the status quo. And now I'm glad to say that women of all colours, shapes and sizes can run in races. And that there's other barriers to be broken down, but that's a starting point. And it's so important that we have those visible champions to start that and break down those barriers. Just in terms of the selfie, I would say that when I first started running with Tawanda and Sue, we wanted to validate our experiences. And I think, self-celebration and also to share that moment with friends and family through social media, which is the norm, but also a self-reward. I must confess, I'm a bit of a kind of, I like to collect the bling from a race, and just celebrate your own achievements. So to be your own self-motivator, if you can take a moment that many years later you might be sharing with your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, you can actually say, when they say to you, "No, Grandad, I can't believe you ran the London Marathon," you can say, "There's me in my bling with my co-runners," and you've got those memories. So it's capturing memories as well as celebrating your own achievements.
I think that's so powerful. And I think one of the things I wanted to bring up and again give you your flowers for was because you're not only capturing your own moments, but you're validating the presence of women in those spaces. And I think we heard from Professor Corinne Fowler how easy it is to rub out certain figures from history.
Yeah.
So actually, you taking those pictures and sharing them is more important than just your own memento.
Yep.
But a memento of history, a flag in the sand to say we were here, I was here, we were here, and we had a presence. So thank you for that. I think that's really important.
And that's something we have now that they didn't have centuries before. So we can validate and authenticate history as it happens now.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you both for joining me on the Step Together podcast. This podcast wouldn't be called what it is without you, Natasha. So thank you. And thanks to the community. And thanks to Northamptonshire Community Foundation for really being underpinning a lot of this community movement that's going on, because a major barrier is finances. And if you want to get in touch with Northamptonshire Community Foundation, they can help you overcome some of those barriers. So thank you, Rachel, for all the great work you're doing. And Natasha, likewise.
Thank you very much.
Well, we've got a special moment for you right now. We're joined by guest Natasha Martinez, and she's going to sing us a song about the outdoors. So let's get stuck in.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, blue birds fly. There are trees that I heard of once in a lullaby. Thank you.
Well done, well done. I tell you what, let me give you some background on that as well. We just spoke to Natasha briefly off air and heard that she's a musician. And we said, you know what? Get a song live here and now. And what a room of encouragement. What a room of creativity. Thank you for bringing that energy, Natasha. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And best of luck. Where can the people find you? If they want to get more into your music, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, which is Latasha Martinez, or my Instagram as well, which is Latasha Martinez, Forever Green Photography.
There we go. Forever Green Photography in the Delapré Abbey Library. Thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you.
Take care. Hello and welcome back, of course, to the Step Together podcast. You're joined still by me, Kavan, but I have to give a massive round of applause to the lady of the day, Dr. Marcella Daye.
Yeah, thank you.
Honestly,
Thanks to you too.
no, listen, honestly, it's been incredible. It's been such an honor to be able to be a part of and capture today forever.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I want to do is straight away give you your props for bringing together such, an inspiring room, predominantly of women who have gone on a journey with you. I think you've got some untapped talent that I want to bring to the surface right away. I don't know if you know this, but Uber has recently ventured into Northampton.
Okay.
I think there's a market for you. A few of the ladies who have been on this journey with you referenced you alleviating a barrier for them by picking them up, dropping them off. There's an Uber business in there for you somewhere, Marcella.
I think so. But to be a bit pedantic or boring, it's that was one of the things we thought about when they were saying there's a question when you put in for a grant about the sustainability, what you're going to do to contribute to sustainability. So I said one of the things we could do is a carpool so that we don't all drive. And to a point, there's a bit of that. So we have myself picking up some people, and I think those were the ones who are more vocal. But there are other people who are picking up others as well. So that's good because at least it helps me because I'll be honest, got off one walk in February, didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to come out of my bed, much less to go walk. But I knew there were some women waiting on me to pick up. So I couldn't shirk that responsibility. So to be honest, it helps me as well to be consistent and it helps me to be accountable. Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the academic side of this.
Yes.
Because today's presentation and today's podcast, has captured so much of the authentic stories,
Yes.
the feelings, the sentiments, the meanings behind people who have taken part in this. What's the bridge between those stories and the academy?
Yeah, I think increasingly the academy is beginning to realize that sometimes we have numbers, we have stats, we have statistics and data that tells us things. And we can look at the data and do some analysis, but often it doesn't explain why. It doesn't explain context. And so there is, I would say, more of a turn now in academia to find ways to value and appreciate the lived experiences of people, because that's where the power is. So that when we think about policy is not done in a vacuum based on numbers or statistics. It's based on what people feel, what people prioritize, and that can be very helpful. Sometimes, there's this kind of thinking that if we leave it all up to what people feel is important, they're not the experts, so they don't know. But the importance, or I think the real merit of expertise, is understanding how people see their world and their perspectives. And so then whatever expertise you have feeds or works in collaboration with people's experiences that makes your interventions, your planning, even more appropriate and suitable. So you don't tend to, that's the thing about research, we tend to want to sit outside and look at the object and take it apart and examine it. And sometimes that doesn't always give us the fullest picture. But when you go to people and you say, you tell us about how you coped with this, how you came over that barrier to start walking, what are the material differences you see, it gives us information about what are these basic, the term we tend to use in academia is variables or constructs, so that we understand these constructs. Then when we identify them, we can then move to the next stage to continue to measure them. But we tend to want to start measuring before we know what to measure. So that's the importance of lived experiences. It tells us these things.
Okay. So we've been joined by established walking organisations, Women for Women, Black Girls Hike, so on and so forth. Why not just do interviews with them rather than seek to engage in participatory action research? Why choose PAR over an interview, which would get you those sentiments, but I know you're going to argue wouldn't get you as rich sentiments as PAR.
But that's true. But even more, the objective, the essential value of PAR is this: it's not just about extracting information from people, but it is also empowering them in the process. So I knew that for every month that somebody went on a walk with me, it wasn't just me hearing their stories. They're benefiting by actually going on the walk. I'm equipping them. So PAR, it's not just about taking, it's also about depositing, it's about empowering, upskilling, equipping. And we heard it from the testimonials where people said, I don't do outdoors, I'm not that kind of a person. And they said, but when I did it, this is how I felt. So that's the difference between just interviewing somebody and say, why are you not going outdoors? What are the barriers? It's actually going out with them, giving them an opportunity to trial it, to see what it is. And then in that sense, at least, even if some may choose not to continue to work, because we have had that. We've had people who have started with us and have not stopped. And it's not that we have failed. Sometimes I want to say, okay, I wish everybody would still keep coming. But at least what I do know is that for those moments when they came, they were given valuable information from which they can make a choice.
So you spoke there about empowering and providing agency to those who are in the community to be able to take part and lead.
Yes.
Sarah Hannah, one of the speakers at today's event, who is a fashion designer for TLC, a Northamptonshire-based sort of sportswear company. She referenced that, one of the benefits of engaging in active work is feeling empowered, but you cannot, it is self-love, but you cannot empower others empower yourself without empowering others.
Yeah.
And it's that reciprocal relationship of empowerment that really brings the value.
Yes.
Marcella, one of the things, you know, that I think was really strong from today was, like you said, that sense of, I can't do that. It's not for me. There's almost a glass ceiling there, particularly for women of colour.
Yeah.
And may I add, women of a certain age, it seems.
As well, yes.
So why is it, do you think, that some of those barriers exist?
Well, there are several reasons for them, because there have been sometimes traditional stereotypes about what people of color do or what they don't do. And people always reference the fact that you go to the countryside, you look for working, you know, you play the game, spot the black man, spot the black woman, spot the Asian woman, you know, because we're so rare in the outdoors. So there are some traditional barriers within communities that sometimes tend to just remain. And because before, up to recently, to give credit to the outdoor and countryside agencies, they've been aware of this disparity and they've been concerned about it, because as far as they know, they have a public trust. They're being funded from public funds. So it's important for them to reach all communities and not just some. So they have this concern, and they have reached out to try to find ways to support ethnic minoritized groups to get them out into the open. So I think basically it's getting past the stereotypes that says people of color don't do this, we don't want to enjoy the outdoors at all, it's not part of our culture. And I think one of the things that this research has shown is it's not true, that there is what I would say latent demand, or in some cases pent-up demand. But then if you think about it, it's having to know it's not just about putting out a brochure that doesn't have people of color on it. That's not going to work because they're not represented in our marketing. So it's marketing, and it's not just a tokenistic dropping in one black person on a brochure cover as well, which I tend to see a lot of now to suggest diversity. It's about the planning of the product, the experience, and the services you offer. People of color may need a bit more support in terms of groups. They may need that covering. They may need that encouragement. You have groups like that do go out and reach out to people who just don't do the outdoors, and they help, just like what I'm doing. We organize groups, we encourage them, we provide incentives, we provide that group support so that people become more aware, more provide opportunities and dates that they can plan. But it's deliberate, it's intentional. So I think it's going to take a bit more work in terms of having these kinds of outreach to widen participation, particularly among ethnic minoritized groups. But once the information gets out, surely there's an uptake. And I think in recent years, we're seeing definitely an increase. From my perspective, I don't have exact statistics and data, but just since I started this journey, exploring this topic about 2 to 3 years ago, I'm seeing increasingly on social media, if that's anything to go by, quite a number of groups. They're just proliferating, quite a number of groups, perhaps within their ethnic groups, so black groups, wanderers of color, people of color paddle, all sorts of different wonderful names are being created of people going outside there in the outdoors, not just walking, but doing all sorts of different leisure activities within their ethnic groups and also across different ethnic groups. We saw an example today of with Dr. Sarah Njiri, where she did her walking group, and she merged with another group, even though she was Black Girls Hike, then went out with a local community walking group, and there was that allyship. And I think that's what this particular research has shown, the allyship between women who had shared values, women for women, the shared values they had about their faith and their spiritual journey. So they were coming together and doing things. So when we proposed this thing of the walking, even though there were different ethnic groups, there was already that trust. And that facilitated why we were able to get it going.
And I think one of the great things that I took away from Sarah's presentation as well so we've spoken about people, those with agreed identities, if you will, and those with different identities.
Yeah.
But Sarah's presentation focused on her process of finding her identity.
Yes.
It wasn't defined at the start.
Wow.
So even if you're watching this and you're listening to this and you think, but I don't fit into any of those groups, walk anyway, because by the end of it, you will find your tribe. You will find your identity. And that may mean starting your own thing, which Northamptonshire Community Foundation can help with. Or it may mean finding one that is more affiliated with you.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many possibilities with the work that you're doing. And I've realised that today through being an audience member. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
While I have the privilege of being here and being on camera and having this mic and the power, let me say to you, I've known you across many different forums over the years now. And I just want to say I'm very, very proud of you for being a leader, for being a genuine mobiliser, for putting your car on the line, the petrol on the line, all those things. But genuinely, as a leader, as a mobiliser, and as an inspiration, you're doing a lot for this community.
Thank you so much.
So may I be the authority that calls you a honorary Northamptonian indeed for all the work you're doing in this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Calvin, and thank you for your support today.
Hey, anytime.
Calvin, the man.
Thank you, I appreciate it. If you want to hear more of Marcella and I's chats, the akhi&saltfish Digital Network is where you need to be, because we've got an archive of now 2 or 3 conversations on there, all about Marcella's research, but also Catherine Joy White, who you saw earlier. We spoke to her too. It was a great conversation. Last final things from me. 2 final things before we close off this. Number 1, what are the next steps for this project?
Well, I did try to float one today. Not sure if it went down so well, but it's a part of a research I'm doing where I'm seeing where some of the earliest incentives for women going out to walk, particularly in this country, mainly white women and so on, it was all around walking, and then they would journal. And many of them, such as famous writers such as Virginia Woolf, who wrote To the Lighthouse, many of her inspiration, she was an urban walker, so she walked in London and around, and she got most of her inspiration to write after walking. And for that was a creative process. And increasingly in leisure studies, we're talking more and more about the importance of not just writing, but art, creativity as a way of relaxation. So it is incorporated with this whole notion of leisure. So you walk and then you come and you reflect. You reflect on your journal. You know, people do your journaling. And some people do poetry. They write lyrics. For me, perhaps as an academic, I can sketch out what's my next research design, because writing is immortalizing, and there's something about us as humans that we want to leave something in print beyond our own mortality.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's an artifact of who we are. We're saying, I was here, you know? So for me, it's another level, because there are some people who may respond to that kind of, it's not that we're getting rid of well-being. Well-being is perhaps expressed in our writings, well-being of the mind. And it's, as I said to you, the words I used in my own presentation, it's about flourishing as well. So it's, and I guess if we think about Maslow and that hierarchy, it's about self-actualization at the top. So I think it's part of it, and that's one of the ways we do that. It's by our expressions or literary expressions. So I'm thinking about that as a next step if we're going forward.
I think that's the right place to be. And just again, a nod to Marcella there. Marcella, you actually bought me a journal about a year ago. Do you remember?
Yes,
remember?
yeah.
So I know you're invested in that and you pay it forward.
Yeah.
Okay, final question from me. History. We've heard a lot on today's podcast about history and what it means and leaving your mark in history. And I think one of the best ways that archaeologists can prove what was here before us is by uncovering footsteps, you know, brushing them away with the little paintbrush thing. So when people look back in history and they see the footsteps of this project, of Step Together, whatever the weather, when they brush away all the dust and they find the mark of this project, what do you want it to say?
I wanted to say that it was, what I say, the green shoots of a project that wanted to be bold in grappling with the wicked problem of race health inequalities. The fact that so many of our women are not going out as we should, and that there's a disproportionality in terms of their participation, speaks to issues of gender and also race, that intersectionality which has so bedeviled women of color in our communities. So if there's anything I'd want Step Together to be remembered for, and any imprint on the soil or on the earth, for me would be, here was the green shoots of a project that says we're going to tackle, we are dealing with this, so that whoever finds it years to come will say, yeah, that was an issue then, but it's not so now.
Thanks for painting that picture so well. And Marcella, thank you. And everyone watching, thank you so much. Any details you need to get in touch with Marcella or find out more about the project will be below in the description wherever you're listening or watching this. So please do check them out. I've been Kavan. This has been an incredible conversation with a bunch of people all about today's amazing event in Delapré Abbey. Marcella, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
for you, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.